All right, everybody, good afternoon. Welcome to the IAEM certification webinar series for the CEM and AEM certifications. My name is Jody Carter. I'm one of your CEM commissioners. Full-time, I'm the emergency preparedness coordinator for Baptist Health based out of Little Rock, Arkansas. Also with us today as one of our presenters, we've got Jim Howson. Jim, say hello.
Hi, this is Jim Howson. I'm work for the Department of State Operational Medicine Unit in DC.
And Jim and I have the pleasure today of walking all of you through the training, the letters of reference, the exam, and the certification fees portion of your CEM and AEM applications. I'm happy to say we just flipped 100 attendees. Now we're up to 102 attendees that are joining us today. This is being recorded. So your questions, your comments, your answers will be recorded. The slides and this recording are going to be made available through the IAEM.com website just in the next few days. So make sure you keep an eye on that. That you can get a copy of the presentation and this recording in the next couple of days on the IAEM website. Also, a little bit of housekeeping. We do have our chat feature available through GoToMeeting. So if you have questions as we're going along, please put your questions into the chat window. We've got some folks monitoring our chat window who are going to help us look for questions and answer them. So please submit your questions there. If you have any questions that are specific to your application, that you may not feel comfortable putting out for all the world to see, feel free to send it by email to ceminfo@iam.com. That email address will be at the very end of this presentation, but it's ceminfo@iam.com. Of course, you see here on the webinar the disclaimer that the information contained here is current as of a week ago. I can tell you I believe it is current as of today. Requirements and certification application forms are subject to change. In fact, there was a change that was made just a few weeks ago that we will cover when we get there today. I'll tell you this, y'all, before we get into the weeds, if you don't get anything else out of this, if you have to log off and you have to go, here's what you need to get as you're doing all of this. Document, document, document. We trust you, but we need you to validate everything. Validate all of your claims. So all of the hours, all of the letters of reference need to have independent verification of what you are submitting for your application. Make it clear for us commissioners as we're going through it what it is that you're wanting us to see. If you have to highlight it and scan it, highlight it and scan it to PDF. That's fantastic. And so if you get nothing else out of that, out of the next hour or so, document, document, document. Also do want to give a shout out to our new featured mentor program. You can go to the website IAEM.com, click on certification, and then we have the resource center. For the CEM resources, we do have the new featured CEM mentor program. Fantastic program. I looked through the list of names today, saw several on there I recognize. We've got some great folks that have volunteered to be mentors. So make sure that you take advantage of that and get a mentor to help you through the application. Mr. Jim, before I hit the next slide, anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate the documentation aspect of it. We're going through a pile of certification applications, and you don't want us guessing. You want us to be able to very clearly see, what your application is, and full documentation on it. Because sometimes we kind of get confused. It's not really clear, what the number of hours were, or did you actually go to a program because there's no certificate of completion or something like that. We're trying to make some guesses, and we may or may not guess right. So it's easier to make sure there's no guesswork, and you're making it very simple for us to go through and approve it.
Yes, sir. It's make it clear for us, and it makes it a lot easier for us to be able to review your application. Going on to the first slide. The bulk of today's time is going to be spent talking about training. We will get to letters of reference. We will talk about the exam and the fees, but most of what we're going to talk about is going to be on the certification training components. This webinar is the second of a series of 4. There will be another in June. There will be another in July. The one in June, we'll talk about the education and the degree requirement. What we're focusing on here is the 100 contact hours for general management training and the 100 contact hours for emergency management training. So every applicant has to submit at least 200 contact hours of training, 100 of GM or general management and 100 of EM or emergency management. Now, we do like to remind you that we don't allow more than 25 hours in any one topic area. Now, the topic areas are defined by you, the applicant. So if you need to get a little creative in your topics, then get a little creative. You know, don't go too far out there, but the topics are applicant defined. So make sure that as you are filling out your application and you're defining what the subject area is, or the topic, subject area, same thing. As you're defining that topic or subject area, you don't submit more than 25 hours in one topic area. And the other thing is that all of your training must have been completed within the last 10 years from the date of your application. So if you took FEMA IS 100 in 2005 and you're submitting your application this month in May of 2017, we're not going to be able to accept it because it's been more than 10 years ago. So make sure that the training material you're submitting is indeed within the last 10 years and no more than 25 hours in one topic. You do need 100 hours of GM. You do need 100 hours of emergency management or EM training. We do have some folks, and this is good practice, who will submit a little more than that, especially if they have some that they don't know if we'll be able to accept or not. So 120 hours of GM training and 120 hours of EM training isn't abnormal. It's not inappropriate. I'll tell you, 500 hours probably is. Actually, it definitely is. Please don't ask us to look through 500 hours of emergency management training. So you can go a little over, but stay within reason, okay? And I'll tell you, for we mentioned it before, I'm going to mention it probably every slide, you've got to have your documentation, okay? So if you're going to submit that FEMA 300, the Independent Study 300 course that you took last year for, let's see, what, 300 is what? You think usually 16 contact hours. You're going to submit that. That's great. Give us proof you completed it. Now, proof that you completed it is not an accepted application. Proof that you completed it is not a pin that you got from somewhere while you were there. Proof that you completed it is the completion certificate, or possibly, if it's the online independent study courses, your FEMA IS transcript. That would be acceptable as well. So you're going to have your 100 hours of EM training. You could give us the certificate for each of the individual classes. That's fine. That's great. Or you could give us a copy of your FEMA transcript. Jim had some great insight onto the FEMA transcript. Jim, you want to talk about that? We might have lost Jim.
I'm sorry, that was operator error. I had the mute button on my phone. So we were talking about this the other day, and we love the transcript because if, say, you have 15 or 20 different FEMA courses, if you load up the transcript and then you just highlight on the transcript each of the FEMA courses that you're going through, I can just go down the list and say, okay, well, you had, IS 100, IS 200, and it's all in the FEMA transcript. I can just do a quick check mark and go right down. It does it very quickly for us. It's very easy, no muss, no fuss.
Yeah, I'll tell you, we've got some great commissioners, but I can tell you, sometimes I haven't had my coffee yet, and so the easier you can, the more clear, not necessarily the easier, but the more clearly you can document what it is you're submitting, the easier it is for us early in the morning or late at night when we're doing these reviews. The easier it is for us to be able to work through it with you.
I just want to say that I've had some individuals who, in their application process, I swear to you, were trying to piss off the commissioners. And I'm sorry if I'm using off-color language, but it really was. They made it very, very difficult for us to go through and score things. And so again, I'm going to try and give the person every benefit of the doubt, and I will make phone calls and check things out. But if it's not clear, if it's confusing, if the documentation is just not there, it's impossible for me to do.
That's right. That's right. Make it possible for us to be able to work with you to successfully grant the credential that you're applying for. We want to be able to award these credentials, so work with us and help us be able to do that. There on the tip on the slide you see on the screen, the first bullet under tips recommends that you use the IAEM training allocation table. That table, the last update was February of 2017. Whenever you go onto our website, IAEM.com, go to the certification drop-down menu, click on Resource Center. It's down near the bottom under a title called Links to Additional Resource Documents. And under there you see the sample training allocation table. You click, tell it what country you're in, and you pull up an Excel file that's got the hundreds of courses that we have looked at and have been pre-approved for training. If you've got a course that is on that list, all you've got to do is submit the proof of completion, and we're able to approve it. If you've got some training that is not on the allocation table, then we're going to need a little additional information from you. For that, in addition to documentation that you've completed it, we also need a course syllabus. We need to have an idea of what the course talked about. So if it's not on the table, you can, in the application, I think there's a place for you to put some comments, but one of the uploads needs to be a copy of the course syllabus to give us an idea on what the course was about, and why we should approve it as either general management training or emergency management training. Then there's that third bullet right there. While I'm not going to go into what we're looking for in the degrees, that was last month, what I do want to say is any courses that made up your bachelor's degree we can't double dip, and I think I'm getting ahead of myself on the slide, but we can't double dip. If you're claiming the bachelor's degree, I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next slide. If you're claiming the bachelor's degree for the education requirement, you can't double dip and use those same courses for the training requirement. Okay. Now, if you've got, say, a bachelor's in emergency management plus a master's in emergency management, then you can use one of the degrees to meet the education component and the other degree to meet the training component. You can do that. Education and training, we're counting those are two different sections. Education has to do with degrees. Training is this 100 hours of EM and 100 hours of GM, okay? So we've got on the slide here a little bit more of the information about the degree program. If you do have a bachelor's degree or higher in emergency management, besides the note at the bottom about double dipping, one of the benefits to submitting a CEM or AEM or a CEM application with a degree is that your 100 hours of EEM training can be reduced. So if you've got a bachelor's or higher in EM or related, then you won't necessarily have to document as many hours in emergency management as long as you're not double dipping. And here you've got the chart of how long ago it was you earned that degree, when the degree was granted according to your transcript, and then how many hours of emergency management training you're going to need to provide. So if you got your degree 5 years ago, 60 hours is all you have to do. So we'll accept 40, you have to do 60. We do consider one continuing education unit to equal 10 contact hours. Doing the math, 1 semester hour is one and a half quarter hours, or 15 classroom hours. There at the bottom, I'm reading this bottom bullet. So in other words, if you're taking a traditional 3-hour course, if you're taking an undergraduate or graduate level emergency management course or general management course, and it's good for 3 semester hours or what have you, that 3 semester hour course will equal 45 contact hours. Now remember, we only allow 25 hours per topic. So if you've taken 4 courses in emergency management that you're submitting towards this training component, you will be able to count 25 hours for each of those courses. Jim, I feel like I'm rambling. Why don't you help me out here?
I'm sorry, I just got distracted here in the office. Can you just repeat the question?
All I said was I kind of feel like I'm rambling here a little bit. Help pull me out of this. Help me pull out of this.
Well, I guess the biggest thing as far as is with using the degree is going back to not the double dipping and just making sure that we don't do that. And then also in looking at a particular course, a course may have been, say, 45 contact hours. If you pull up the syllabus, we may be able to give you, say, 10 hours in one area and other hours in another, because it may cover both the management and, say, response of disasters, things like that.
Fantastic point there. One thing I do want to recommend or remind folks whenever you are submitting the bachelor's degree to reduce the number of hours you have to provide, make sure that the transcript that you are submitting shows where that degree has been conferred. Don't submit, if you submit a transcript from the university and you almost have a degree, well, you don't yet. So make sure that the transcript shows where that degree was successfully conferred. And do want to add, for the AEM component, a degree is not required. So if you are looking for the Associate Emergency Manager certification, the degree component is not required. However, it is for CEM. I'm looking to see if there's anything else in my notes here that I wanted to talk about. Again, if nothing else, folks, document. Okay. So what kind of events will count? What kind of events can we consider for your emergency management and your general management training? Well, they could be workshops, they could be seminars, they could be traditional in-classroom courses, they could be FEMA independent study courses. I believe TEACS has some online courses. There's a group out of Louisiana that's got some great online courses that could be considered. Federal agencies, there's VOADs that have specific training that might fit. Various state, local agencies, your accredited 2 or 4 year institutions, private organizations. Military's got some fantastic emergency management training. So there's all sorts of organizations or all sorts of sources for the training. Looking at the emergency management specific training, the biggest point that we need to make in this section, we're now specifically talking about the 100 hours of emergency management training, okay? It needs to be emergency management, not emergency response tactics. Okay, you can see it says the screenshot you've got here is from the application itself, and that emergency management training, while it might be in the context of one of these disciplines that you're going to see on the next two slides, it must be substantially related to emergency management. EMT class, great program. I teach an EMT class occasionally. The EMT course itself is response tactics. Okay, Firefighter 1 is response tactics. But some of the higher courses, some of the fire officer material does have some of the emergency management components to it. So while we do have these here, exercises are great, exercise courses are great. FEMA IS has got some real good exercise courses. EOC management, disaster preparedness, going to the next slide, shelter management, shelter operations, are all good emergency management courses. Again, make sure that you do provide documentation that it is substantially emergency management, not emergency response. Let's take this medical technology bullet, for example. If you're going to submit that you've taken an introduction to medical terminology course, and it's my employer has a 3 contact hour intro to medical terminology course. Let's say you wanted to submit that as emergency management training, where you're going to have the transcript to show where that intro to medical terminology is substantially emergency management for us to be able to accept it. Now that one says medical technology, not terminology, so maybe I should have read the slide a little better, but y'all get the point there. There's a fantastic PIO course, a public information officer course, again, in person or online, webinars, seminars, what have you. And the training, one more time, the topics, I should say, the topics, 25-hour topics. The incident command bullet here is a great example. If you take the 100, the 200, 300, and 400 courses for emergency or for incident command, if you take ICS 100, 200, 300, and 400, depending on which version of the course you took and how it was offered and who offered it and what the certificate says, you could have as many as 50 contact hours. But we only accept 25 per topic area. So if you've got 100, 200, 300, and 400, let's just say for a total of 50 contact hours, you might want to consider that I think IS 400 is a lot more about unified command than incident command. So in defining your topics, you might want to call your IS 400 course unified command. That way that 16 hours can stand on its own. Okay, so sometimes you might need to get a little creative, but don't go too far left or too far right whenever it comes to defining the topics. Jim, on emergency management training, anything else that we can add?
No, I just want to agree with you on that, and as you say, don't get too creative with some of this stuff, because if the claim's too outlandish, we're not going to be able to do it. But like you say, if you have incident command versus unified command, those are definitely two different topics that we would give credit for.
That's right. That's right. Going to the next slide, looking at general management training, and just kind of a fun little fact, we're now at 143 attendees. I'm flattered that y'all are all here, so thank you for spending your afternoon with us. Jim and I appreciate your time. Looking at GM training. GM training, it is 100 hours. There's no way to reduce this one. Under the emergency management, if your degree isn't double dipping, you can use a degree to reduce those hours. For GM training, it's definitely going to be 100 hours. And this is general management training. We love our General Motors products, but here we're talking general management training. So again, 100 hours, 25-hour topic maximum, document, document, document. Everything we said applies here, okay? Check it against the training allocation chart. It's got to be within the last 10 years. If it's not on the chart, give us the syllabus. Regardless if it's on the chart or not, you've got to give us proof that you've completed it, either a FEMA transcript or individual certificates. One other thing I do want to mention is the certificate will hopefully say the number of contact hours. Okay, having the number of contact hours on there will help your application in validating the number of contact hours you're claiming. So make sure that if you've got it, most of the FEMA certificates do. Some of the state courses do. I know TEACS does. The group out of Louisiana, they do as well. There's a lot of great courses out there. Make sure that you've got the number of contact hours if you're able to. But we've got a list here of general management courses, human resources, and EEO, volunteer management, volunteer resources, ethical courses to help with, because shoot, ethics and disasters, right? Ethics and emergency management. We live in a world of ethical decisions. So that's a fantastic class. Grant writing is in here. Oral communication, a class that I probably could stand to go ahead and take again under general management training. So these are some of the topics. Whenever you do submit it, your EM training and your GM training submission pages will look very similar. It's easy to get them confused, so make sure that the courses that you're submitting for disaster or emergency management training are indeed emergency management training. I've seen it before where folks have put general management courses into the emergency management section. It's easy to get confused. So as you're going through your application, you can see here on the screen in our electronic submission database, you can see here that there's an add button. Click the add button. The subject area is that topic. Again, 25-hour maximum per topic, but tell the computer what the subject area or the topic is. Type in the title of the training course. In this blank here where it says title of training course, I recommend that you go ahead and give us the course number and the course name in that one block. So for example, you might type IS-1, the emergency manager. That's the entire title, okay? Or IS-100, Introduction to ICS, something along those lines, okay? So subject area would be ICS, title would be IS-100, Introduction to ICS, total hours, either according to the certificate or the training allocation chart, and then you would then submit that line item. If after you submit it, you come back to this page, you need to remove it, there will be a button there to remove it with. So you put in subject area ICS, title IS-100, intro to ICS, for a total of, I think it's what, 3 hours for IS-100? So we'll call it 3 hours. You now have 97 additional EM hours to submit. So you're going to add another line item, and you're going to submit it. You're going to complete it again. Make sure again that you do upload a copy of your certificate or upload a copy of your FEMA transcript. Scan it to PDF, and have that immediately available for us. Under general management, the process is the same. You will add a line item with the topic, the title, the total hours, upload your documentation, and then complete another line item. The computer system will add the hours up for you there at the bottom. The computer system does know that we have a 25-hour maximum per subject area, and so if you submit 100 hours and call it all incident command, it will only give you credit for 25. The commissioners, when we review, do the same thing. Jim, that's everything we've got on the training. What else should we talk about before we move on to letters of reference?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add in on the training, especially in the GM side, it's fairly wide-ranging. So as an example, I manage contracts, and so I've taken a contract management program, which is perfectly acceptable for the general side. But even though I'm going to be managing contracts in emergency management and emergency response things, it's still not an emergency management type training. So it could only be counted towards that general management side. It's acceptable for that, but not for the other.
All right. Thank you very much. Again, as we move on to letters of recommendation here, if you do have questions, please submit it through the chat window. Chelsea is there monitoring our chat window for us. So if you've got questions, please submit it so that we can get them answered. Again, for folks that have joined us in the last few minutes, this webinar is being recorded. The slides and the recording will be made available on the IAM website in the next few days, so you'll have those resources available at your fingertips. As we move forward, talking about your CEM or your AEM application, this is a change. What I'm about to tell you is a change effective within just the last few weeks. If you started your application before April 18th, you will see in your application that it's asking for 3 letters of reference. However, effective April 18th, we now only require 1 professional letter of reference. It must be from your current supervisor. Okay? Now, if you don't have a supervisor, say you own your own consulting company, then you can have a letter from a current CEM as an acceptable substitute. But for the most part, for most of our applicants, there is someone in a supervisory capacity who can write that required letter of reference. If you started your application, if you have already started your application and it requires you to enter 3, then what you're going to want to do is just make a note that that requirement is no longer a requirement as of April 18th. And you'll put that in the notes, and then also it requires you to attach a file. So just make a PDF that says that this is no longer required as of April 18th of 2017. Now, if you want to submit a second or a third, if you're working on your application and you've already gone to the trouble of getting all 3 letters of reference, we'll still take them. We only require now 1 professional letter of reference that must be from your supervisor, and it must be on letterhead, and it must be signed. If you want to submit a second letter and or a third letter, feel free to do so. You can still submit up to 3 if you would like, but you only have to submit 1. Now, we do still need contact information for 2 more references, but we don't have to have letters from them. So, first person is your supervisor. We've got to have their contact information and a letter of reference. Person number 2, person number 3, we've got to have their contact information, but not necessarily a letter. If you want to upload it, you're welcome to, but you don't have to. The letters you do submit do need to be on letterhead and signed from that person. On letterhead and signed. Best way to do this is scan it to PDF and upload the PDF. This is new as of just a few weeks ago, so make sure that you do pay attention to what the new requirements are when it comes to letters of reference. Okay, what I've got on the slide right here is what is exactly in the application. This is the new verbiage. Must submit. Yes, this is the new verbiage. The second and third reference could be a past supervisor, some partner organizations that you work with, local emergency management association officials, but it cannot be a subordinate or a student or friends or relatives or neighbors. So we are looking for professional, not personal letters of reference. Your neighbor probably loves you. I don't blame them. You're probably great people. But we are looking for professional letters of reference. And what you see here is what we're looking for. This is the form you will submit just for your visual reference. This is the form that you'll submit with at least 1 signed letter of reference from the current supervisor on letterhead. Jim, anything else on that I've missed, sir?
Well, yeah, I just actually this current period for certifications, I ran into a situation where an applicant submitted letters of reference on plain stationery. The problem was is that the applicant also claimed to be a member of the clandestine service, and so the question was like, well, how do I know who you are, what this is? Now, what that person did do, though, is provide both an email and phone number, so I was able to reach out to that person's supervisor and verify that, number one, it was policy of the agency not to put this type of stuff on letterhead, and that the person was who they said they were. And I was able actually made several contacts, so that was the only saving grace there. But it was immediately looking at it and saying, well, this is not going to fly. But then looking a little closer, said, well, I have to make a bunch of phone calls on this one, and so we'll do that. But that's a very unusual situation.
Wow, I will admit, for the month of May, I have not yet done my review, so I'm interested to see if maybe I'm the second reviewer on one of those. So now you've piqued my interest, and now I need to go in there and start my reviews for this month.
Their job description was also classified too, which was another interesting thing. But again, we were able to verify it through other means, but it was challenging.
Very interesting, folks. I think that's a great point that Jim makes, is that there are going to be applications, there are going to be components to your applications that are outside of the norm, and we understand that, and we're okay with that. Just document. If your letter of reference can't be on letterhead because it's classified, Jim, I don't know what you think, but I would just, off the top of my head, I would say if the person had a cover letter that had said, look, here's why this is not on letterhead. I realize it should be. Here's why it's not, and here's who you can contact to validate. But now page 2 is the letter. That probably would have made things a little more.
That would have made that a lot easier. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it would.
Yeah. So folks, we understand extenuating circumstances, y'all. It's our field. We understand. Just explain it to us. We're practicing emergency managers like y'all are. And so we've got no problem reaching out if that's what is in the best interest of the application. Again, we want y'all to succeed. It breaks our heart whenever, it honestly does kind of put a damper on my afternoon if I have more denials than I have acceptance, I must admit. So help us help y'all, because that's what we want to do. Jim, I'm going to move on to multiple exams unless you have anything else on the reference.
No, it sounds good to me.
All right, multiple choice exam. There you do have to take, as part of your application process, you do have to take a 100 question exam. Pardon me, there are two versions available. One is country specific for our friends in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the US. There is a second version available for all other practitioners across the world. It is a 100 question exam. You do have to get at least 75 of those 100 correct. I do strongly recommend that you go on the IAEM.com website, click on certification, then down to resources, and there is a list of materials that we recommend you study to prepare for this exam. There are 2 courses I want to point out that we recommend that you study, but that are no longer publicly available, and that is FEMA IS number 1 and FEMA Independent Study 139. IS 1 is called the Emergency Manager, and FEMA IS 139 is called Exercise Design. Neither of those are active courses on the FEMA Independent Study website any longer. However, they are still recommended study materials for this exam. Therefore, the study material is available directly from the IAM website. So it's IAM.com, drop down for certification, and then click on resources. You can submit your application first, or you can take your exam first, whichever floats your boat. From the time that you pass the exam, or from the time that your application is approved, you have 1 year to do the other. So you can cart or horse. They can go in either order. but you have 1 year to complete the other step. You've got 2 opportunities to pass the exam. Well, you do have 2 opportunities to pass the exam. The exam can be given either by commissioners, IAM board members, faculty, military training officers, state training coordinators, or IAM headquarters staff. The fee schedule is as listed on the screen here. For certification, if you're currently a member, it's $395. If you're not, it's $595. Recert is $250 or $325. A few pitfalls, and then we're going to get to questions. Chelsea's telling me we've got several real good questions, so I want to get to those. Some pitfalls. We've discussed this several times. Incomplete, sloppy, or out of order application. Make it easy for us to be able to read. Make it clear, not easy, but make it clear for us so that we understand what it is you're trying to show us. Material that requires signatures must have signatures. If we require a signature, then have it signed, scan it to PDF, and upload it. Similarly, your letters of reference need to be on letterhead. Lots of times we have folks who will claim courses or contributions or what have you without independent validation. Everything must be independently validated. Another pitfall is 25 hours per topic area. The double dipping, education and training, we do see that, which is why we hit on it several times. And then not reviewing the list of resources in order to prepare for the exam. I'm going to put our final slide up here as I turn to Chelsea and start looking for questions. If you do have specific questions on your application, please feel free to email them to ceminfo@iaem.com. In this session, we are going to focus on answering general questions. But if you have ones that are very specific to you, the email address is on the screen in the bottom right, ceminfo@iaem.com. There we go. So our first question comes from Chris, who says there are DHS, Department of Homeland Security, I'm hoping you mean, there are DHS courses not included in the training allocation table. How do we get a program of instruction for courses not included? So Chris, I hope I'm going to be able to answer your question here. If there is any course, emergency management or general management, that is not on the training allocation chart, then simply upload a syllabus so that we can see what the course was about to help us be able to understand why we should accept it for training. And then also submit that certificate proving that you did complete it. Hope that answers your question, Chris. If not, let us know, and we can try to clarify it further. Another one from Tyler for IS 300 and 400. Would the letter of completion from the sponsoring agency be acceptable, even though they're not official certificates from FEMA? Yes, a letter of completion or a certificate of completion from the sponsoring course, even though it's not FEMA. I can tell you here in Arkansas, 300 and 400 is taught by our local state emergency management agency, and I get a state emergency management certificate. Yes, that does count.
But just on letterhead, remember that.
On letterhead or a certificate, that's correct.
Right.
I can tell you the HCEP course that I took forever ago was taught by a private company that was a certified trainer, and it's on their letterhead, but it was an acceptable course. So yes, Tyler. Brad has a question. What does contact hours mean? For instance, a college course that meets 3 hours a week for 16 weeks is at 48 contact hours. Brad, what we have standardized is we have said that a university course we accept as 15 weeks long. So if it's a 3 semester hour course, that 3 semester hour course meets 3 hours a week for 15 weeks for a total of 45 contact hours. 1 CEU equals 10 contact hours. If you're in a class for 3 hours, if you're in FEMA 100 online, we accept that as 3 contact hours. If you sit through FEMA IS 300 for 16 hours, then we count that as 16 contact hours. What else? Would providing, this comes from Jeffrey. Jeffrey says, would providing a hyperlink to the training provider site that has detailed information regarding the course suffice? Jeffrey, you can give us a link, but if you're able to download that material, PDF it for us, even if it's screenshots and PDF it for us,
we may have problems following the link in some cases. I'm having a problem today because the firewall is affecting my go-to webinar thing, so I may not be able to access that hyperlink.
That's right. That's right. Jeffrey, I don't want to say spoon feed us, but frankly, spoon feed us.
Exactly.
The more clear you're able to make it, and the more concise and the more to the point you're able to put the information in front of us, the easier and faster that we can look through it. The easier of a time we have approving your application. It's not about us. I'm not trying to make it about us, but I'm trying to explain how to help us help y'all be successful in your application. Kate does remind everyone, and I'll reiterate it again here on the audio, so I got the audio up. If we don't answer your question, look out for our frequently asked questions sheet from this webinar that will also be posted. And again, if you've got a question specific to your application or questions you don't want to put out in front of everybody, feel free to email us, ceminfo@iaem.com. Joe asked about advanced degree courses. So do advanced degree classes count towards management hours? Jim, you talked about that a little bit ago. Would you answer Joe's question? Do advanced degree classes count towards management hours?
Absolutely. It just depends on what the class topic is, and it's the same as an undergraduate degree. I mean, as far as the hours, we would definitely count that.
If an advanced, who is this? Joe, if you're taking a master's degree class in analytical chemistry, probably not. If you're taking a master's degree class in conflict management or organizational theory, most definitely. So again, if it's not on the training allocation chart, just give us that syllabus to help us understand why it is either an emergency management or a general management focused course. Next, coming from Chris with a K. I've got a great friend named Chris with a K. Love the name. Chris with a K. Can you use a functional exercise to count towards training credit? Ooh, Jim, you want to take that one, or should we bring in?
I know it.
Bring in our
friend. Yeah, we may want to call for assistance on this one, because I know I would not consider a functional exercise. I mean, that would definitely count towards an exercise for experience, but unless the event was definitely designed for training purposes and there was a syllabus and training objectives in it as compared to exercise objectives, I would be hesitant to give that credit for training.
So folks, what we've not told you is we do have our phone-a-friend that's on the line. His name is Keith Dowler. Keith is the current chair of the CEM Commission. Keith, there's actually 2 questions that we now have in the chat room. They're both very similar. So Keith, I'm going to ask you to unmute and come in. Can a functional exercise or a real-world incident count towards training? Keith, can you take that one?
Thanks so much for the opportunity, and since I do have a second to speak, I thank you all for being on the call and being a part of this. This is a real great opportunity. To answer the question on the table about exercises being used as training, Jim Howson actually answered that spot on correctly. No, the training exercises or real-world events, although they provide us valuable learning opportunities, there are other places in the application for exercises, such as the actual experience component for the CEM application, or the exercise under the same heading, and perhaps it could be even counted somewhere in the professional contributions. But training, we like to see the training that's been described here in a more formal setting. Thanks for the opportunity.
Keith, thank you very much. It's good to have you. Always good to talk to you. Keith, everybody, is from the Washington, D.C. area. He's also healthcare emergency management. I did make the mistake recently of making reference to being inside the Beltway. He was quick to point out that he is a quarter mile outside the Beltway. So we appreciate having Keith with us today. Let's see. Next question coming from Tiffany. If you've taken general management courses during your degree, can you use that towards the general management training hours? Tiffany, great question. You can, as long as it's not double dipping. If you're claiming the degree to meet the education component, you cannot also claim the classes taken to meet that degree in the training section. So you've got to make sure that you're not double dipping there. So if you've got the education component met through a degree, you can't use that same degree for your general management. You know what? I'm gonna. We didn't have this in the presentation, but I'm also going to go off slide just a little bit. I'm going to address our friends that are applying for the AEM, the Associate Emergency Management credential. Be careful using classes. So the AEM does not require a degree. If you're applying for AEM and you're counting classes from college towards the training component, then when you try to upgrade, you will not be able to count that bachelor's degree towards the education component. So we recommend strongly that AEM applicants not use any undergraduate courses to meet the training requirement, because what you're doing is you're stopping yourself from being able to apply for upgrade to CEM with that same degree. So be careful not to paint yourself into a quarter like that. All right, let's see. Does the degree have to be within the last 10 years, Brad? No, it does not. Jim, am I right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. If I teach the course, does teaching a course on ethics, if I teach this comes from Jeremy, does teaching a college level class on ethics count towards GM training? Jeremy, generally what we say is for training the people who are, Jeremy, as long as you're not double dipping, Jim, what do you think? I think I would count it. What do you think?
Again, it would depend on how you're doing it. I might want to see it rather as a teaching component or contribution rather than a training, but I could see it being used as training.
I could see that as well. Let's see, Jeremy, submit that to us, ceminfo@iam.com, and let us get that on our FAQ, if you would, please. So, Jeremy, send that in to us, or Chelsea, if you wouldn't mind taking that. I think that's a great question. Let's put that on the FAQ. John asks, can EMI courses be used to fulfill the GM requirement? John, EMI is a fantastic place. I've been to Emmitsburg once. It's a beautiful campus. If EMI courses meet the requirement, if they're on the training allocation chart, then yes. If they're not on the training allocation chart, submit the syllabus, explain to us why that course should be considered an emergency management or a general management course, and then submit the documentation of completion. Great question there, John. Thank you. Justin, do business continuity courses fall under emergency management or general management category? So I think, I didn't see Elizabeth. So Justin, we do have some business continuity courses on the training allocation chart. We do consider business continuity to be a kissing cousin, if you would say, of emergency management. So business continuity courses could be considered under the emergency management. Again, like you're saying here, it's either continuity or crisis management or organizational recovery. Those type of courses could be considered. Again, send us a syllabus, explain to us why, and then also upload a certificate of completion to show us where it was completed. That certificate of completion could be either a FEMA transcript or a college or a university transcript. Great question, Justin. Thank you. We've got lots of questions coming in still. We've got about 5 minutes. So Chelsea, if you would, let me know when we need to stop here on the chat. But Robert has a question. Robert says, for courses like general management, if the training did not have a formal written syllabus, can we submit a copy of the course slide presentation to substantiate the course content? For courses like general management, if the training did not have a written syllabus, can we submit the slide presentation? So I'll tell you this, the slide presentation would definitely not count as evidence that you have completed it, okay? So what you're asking here is essentially, could you give us the slide deck in lieu of a syllabus? Jim, what do you think?
I would be receptive to that.
Yeah.
As long as there was a certificate along with that.
Yeah. Robert, that would be a probably. That would be rather application specific, but Robert, that would be a very strong maybe, even probably. So thank you, Robert, for that question. All right, just had a message sent to me through IAM. If someone teaches a course, they could use that course under either the training section or under professional contributions, but not both. Ah, great, love it. So we have our answer there. So if you did teach the course, we had someone a little bit ago ask a question, if I taught an ethics course, could I count it? Yes, you can count it under the training section. If you wanted to train it under, if you wanted to submit it under professional contributions, you could, but not both. But yes, if you teach it, you can count it as training. Thank you very much, Ms. Sharon, for that. But yes, you still do have to provide proof that you've taught the course. Something that shows that indeed you did teach, you did complete the course, that you did teach the course. A letter on letterhead. We've had people submit the pay stubs, you know, if they were contracted to teach a particular course, a thank you letter on letterhead plus a copy of the pay stub. So yes, proof that they did teach the course as well, and the syllabus just to help us know what it was you taught. Kimberly says, if you don't yet work in EM, can a letter of recommendation come from a company supervisor who is not in EM? Jim.
Well, don't you need 2 to 3 years of experience in emergency management?
Not for AEM.
That's true, yes.
So if you don't yet work in EM, which means you would be applying for the Associate Emergency Management, can the letter of recommendation come from a current supervisor who's not an emergency manager? I would say yes, because the AEM does not have the 2 to 3 year requirement, work experience requirement. So, so Kimberly, yes, that for the AEM that would work. Kaylin says, can you use a current CEM for a secondary reference? Yes, you could, Kaylin. You definitely could. Your primary has to be your current supervisor, but yes, the secondary could be a CEM. Just have that letter of recommendation on some sort of letterhead. Last question. This is the last one I'm going to be able to take, and then we're going to have to shut it down here. This comes from Mr. Kevin, and y'all, I see several more. I'm so sorry. This comes from Kevin. Is there a time limit from when the letters of reference were written versus when you apply? Kevin, I've never seen that come up before. Just about everything else has a 10-year requirement. Jim, I'm not aware of any time limit on the letters of reference. Are you?
Yeah, that's the first I've heard of that. I would probably stick with that 10-year time frame.
Yeah, Kevin, I've not seen where it has been formally where that has been formalized anywhere. So that's
I would be suspicious of something that was more than 10 years old in a letter of reference.
I would as well. So everybody, we are at 2:59 here Central Time, so we've got about 1 more minute for us to kiss and say goodbye. If you have questions we didn't get to, we will address them in our FAQ. If you have additional questions, please email them, ceminfo@iaem.com, or look out for the FAQ. Again, the slide deck as well as the recording of this presentation will be available online in the next few days. I probably will not listen to it because I hate my voice on recording. Jim, anything before we sign off here, sir?
Just again to reiterate what you said: document, document, document.
Folks, document, document, document. And one more time, I'm going to mention our mentor program. We have that featured mentor program. Last I saw, we had about 130 people that have signed up as featured mentors. IAM.com, the certification drop-down menu, click on resources, lots of resources there, that training allocation chart, your list of mentors, your study material for the exam. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for your afternoon. Keith, Sharon, Chelsea, thank you all for your help. If there's nothing else from anybody, we're going to shut it down and enjoy the rest of our afternoon. Everybody, thanks for coming. Bye now.